one of them being the cravat. Apparently, it might be making a bit of a comeback. What do you reckon? We're talking about this about 40 minutes ago on the programme. We've had a call from Dave in Northampton. He doesn't believe that the cravat will ever make a comeback. He says anything that Albert Steptoe wore surely won't come back into fashion. You never know, Dave. If you want to get in touch, 01604 234455. So on the programme, between now and 7 o'clock, are migrant workers getting a poor deal when it comes to learning English? Funding for courses has been cut by a whopping 40% over the last 5 years. So what does it actually mean for the migrant workforce? We're going to speak to a Northampton recruitment agency in the next few minutes. They specialise in this area, find out what kind of an impact it's having in Northamptonshire. Also on the programme today, the Home Secretary Theresa May is considering strengthening the law on domestic violence. She's going to do that by creating a specific new offence called domestic abuse. We'll get all the details and find out what that's actually going to mean a little bit later on. And we'll also hear, and I've mentioned this a few times so far today, about the Ice Bucket Challenge. If you've just switched your radio on, maybe you've got in the car after a busy day at work, it's an internet craze. Started over in America, but it's got links to right here in Northampton, and it's gone wild. We've had a go at it, I know. Sometimes you wonder, what have I done wrong in life? When you think, I've got to pour some ice cold water over my head. You can see videos of it, and the Saints player's been doing it as well. Ben Foder's taking his top off for us. Facebook.com/BBC Northampton.
Rob Adcock. Local news, sport, weather and travel.
BBC Radio Northampton.
All that's still to come a little bit later on in the programme. First, though, 8 minutes past 5, and funding for teaching migrant workers English has been cut by almost a half. The think tank Demos says that it's leaving hundreds of thousands of people who come over here to the UK to work voiceless. Now, at the last census, 850,000 migrants living in the UK said that they couldn't speak English, but only still 150,000 are on an official English language course to teach them. Now it's the funding that we're talking about, so it's the ESOL courses. That's the English for Speakers of Other Language. That's what we're talking about today. In a moment, we're going to speak to a recruitment agency in Northampton about the impact that funding is having. First, though, Dr. Nick Saville is from the Cambridge English Language Assessment, who've written this report on the matter. Good afternoon, Nick. You okay?
Hello.
Thank you very much for coming in. So explain, first of all, then, a little bit more about this test, then, please.
Yeah, well, ESOL language courses are provided to those who wish to learn English.
Okay, so we'll talk about that more very, very soon. First, though, I think we've got Dr. Nick Saville joining us on the programme. We'll come to that in very, very soon. So you've been obviously talking about this as well then. Can you explain the funding and how it works?
Yeah, well, before everyone were buzzing about... it's a few years ago, is that you could easily go to a college and enroll a course, English course, and it was free of charge, or employers were approached by colleges and offered free lessons for the employees, and it was utilized to a high degree.
Okay, so what would you say is your take on this situation at this moment in time?
Well, at the moment it's not happening, as simple as that.
How difficult is it for workers to come over here and actually work?
Well, it's not that difficult. There are no... because we're talking about those from European Union. You simply buy a ticket, pop onto plane, come in here, and try to find a job. And the thing is, it's not that difficult to find a job, but more and more we come to situations where employers are considering a level of your English, which is important, obviously.
What challenges, obviously you're from a recruitment agency in Northampton, what challenges does someone coming here to work face who can't speak English?
Well, first of all, being away from home, being away from family and friends, and obviously when you make that fateful decision to go abroad, it's a big decision. You have to be prepared. You can't simply just come like that. And obviously, if you don't have English, and I strongly believe, if you live in England, in the UK, you have to speak English. Without English, there are much more less opportunities in here.
What do you think needs to change, Paul?
Well, it would be nice to see if we saw increase as well before, perhaps slightly adjusted system, because before I felt perhaps that money are being thrown around, and people obviously when they don't pay for things, they might take it for granted. So I believe there should be some kind of balanced approach based on results.
Paul, stay where they are just for a couple of minutes. Let's have a word with Dr. Nick Savlis from the Cambridge English Language Assessment, who's written the report on this matter, and he joins me now. Good afternoon, Nick.
Hi there.
First of all,
from Cambridge.
Thank you very much.
Can I just correct you?
Yes.
I'm not actually the author of the report. The report was written by the think tank Demos, which was funded by my organisation, since it's about English, and we deal with English.
Can you explain a little bit more about the test then, before we start?
Well, we at Cambridge English Language Assessment, we conduct tests of English all around the world. There's probably, I think, about 5 million people who take our exams. And these exams are used widely for personal reasons, for work reasons, and for study purposes. And are used, for example, by people coming to the UK to show that they have adequate levels of English, for example, to enroll in university or to become a doctor. And these tests are linked to what's known as the Common European Framework of Reference, which is a widely used framework of proficiency levels. I say these days it's used from Chile to China. It's used everywhere in the world, and therefore it provides a sort of common currency in understanding language levels and what people can do if they've achieved a certain level of proficiency. Very helpful in the case of your previous speaker when you're trying to recruit people for particular jobs. The case that we're particularly commenting on today in light of the Demos report is actually not really focusing on newcomers who are coming here for work, but it's looking at the case of ESOL, or English for Speakers of Other Languages, in the, if you like, resident migrant population, people who've been in the UK for a long time and who would benefit from improving their English language skills to integrate better into society or in the workplace. And who should provide the support for them? Should it be the government, the employer, as we've heard, or a mixture of both and the migrant learner themselves?
Yeah, Nick, what prompted this report then? What prompted this report happening?
I think there's a number of factors, and one of the things is that it doesn't seem to be working very well. And there are a combination of factors. One is has been reduced funding, which is perhaps logical in light of pressure on budgets. But there's also a very fragmented approach and a policy which lacks coherence, because provisions for support for migrants and learners in these different groups comes across the different government departments: Business Innovation Skills, Department of Work and Pensions, the Home Office, Department of Education, as well as sort of grassroots charities and community levels. And this has led to fragmented provision of learning and has asked this very important question about who should pay. And if we do have this need, how do we make sure that if payments are made or efforts put in, that we get full value for money, and that the benefits which are needed to, if you like, unlock the potential that migrants and migrant workers have is actually achieved, so that we don't end up with people in the country not able to speak the language.
Dr. Nick Savile, who's from the Cambridge English Language Assessment, thank you very much for joining me on BBC Radio Northampton. Just before you go, Paul, we've heard about then who should pay for this. What's your take on that?
Well, as I previously mentioned, it has to be a balanced approach, which I believe should be based on results. At the end of the day, the language, English in this particular instance, migrants are speaking, it affects not only their career opportunities at work, it affects their day-to-day life. We're talking in here about integrating into this society.
There will be people listening to this that say, is the responsibility just on the person who moves here? If you move to a place, why can't you learn to speak English and learn it yourself? Or there might even be people listening to this, Paul, that say you're from a recruitment agency that obviously helps people come across here. Is the responsibility on your shoulders? Is there? Do you think?
The thing is, I came to this country a long time ago in 2001, and the first thing what I did, I opened a textbook and I started learning. And after I went to college and I paid for it myself. But obviously, if there was that a little bit of help, I would definitely utilize it.
Paul Kuznecovs is from AEP Baltic Link, a recruitment agency in Northampton, originally from Latvia. Thank you very much for joining me on BBC Radio Northampton this afternoon, 16 minutes past 5.
BBC Radio Northampton.
And